Out of anyone that I've seen do the 75 hard, I think your transformation was the craziest in those 75 days. What did you find out about yourself? Let's face it, life is complicated, and so is the YouTube algorithm. We put so much effort into each of these episodes, and I honestly love what I do. And if you could do the smallest favor for me, it'll be quicker than making a cup of coffee. Just hit that subscribe button or like and follow on the audio channels. Thank you so much. Today marks almost 2 years to the day since we did our first ever episode of Coffee Charged Conversations. And if you are a watcher of the show, you'll remember our first guest, one of my good friends, Guy Salver.
Thanks for having me back, Mike. It's good to be here.
It's good to have you back. And in the last 2 years, I think our lives have changed quite dramatically compared to the people we were. I often go back to that first episode, and as someone who can be quite critical of myself, I try not to judge myself too much and remember that that was the first episode we had ever done. But you took a big leap that day. And you trusted me in something that I'd never done before.
Well, you trusted me as well. I mean, I could have said anything that day, and yeah.
And we had a cool friendship, because I don't think, especially with guys, not many have a relationship where they can share stuff openly with each other. And you and I are pretty good with checking in with each other. We send each other voice notes, let each other know what we're going through or some of our thoughts. And yeah, I think that's really, really important.
No, definitely. And yeah, looking back to that first morning, yeah, I had a big night before the episode. I woke up with you standing over my bed. That was pretty terrifying. And then, yeah, we got the day going. You took me for my first ice bath. And we had a beer before to calm the nerves. Today it's just a coffee.
I remember that day quite clearly, though. And we agreed. I'd done a little bit of running. You weren't really doing much running at the time, but we agreed, okay, cool. We're going to do a run before the episode, followed by an ice bath, and then we're going to go to the studio we'd never been to before and shoot a podcast episode and see how it goes. So that morning, I'm messaging you, I'm phoning you, I'm getting one tick. I'm like, oh no. Like, is Guy even going to show up today? I get to your house early for the run, and you're still not answering your phone, so I'm shouting at the gate. Your mom opens the gate. She's quite furious. She tells me, yeah, Guy got home at like 3:30, 4. So I'm like, okay, great. Go upstairs, get to your room. And I remember I'm just standing over you trying to wake you up. And you wake up like looking at me all dazed and confused. And I said, Guy, are you ready for our 5K run today? And you're like, not going to happen.
No.
And it took you about 15 minutes to realize who you were again.
Yeah.
But you agreed to do the ice bath. And we did, it was your first ice bath. I'd maybe done like 2 or 3 before. And then we made our way to the studio. But before that, like you said, we stopped at Rocker Mama's. We got a big burger each, because I think you needed some fuel in your system.
Yeah.
And a massive Castle Light draft. Just, for me, it was more for the nerves. I think for you, it was kind of just to
stabilizer,
feel a little bit better. And we both loved the sing-along song by Jordan Sparks.
Yes.
Tattoo.
Anthem.
And we almost played it on repeat the whole way to the studio. We had no real clue what we were going to chat about. But I think because we had a good relationship with each other before, and it was quite easy for us to talk about deeper things. So I trusted you as my first guest. We got you. I was a little bit upset that you're hungover, but I'm glad that we're here today. And that first episode, it was the only one we didn't release on YouTube. And it was because we had a phone camera, a wide angle, and then I think we had 2 cameras set up, but they only worked for like 25 minutes and then you had to stop again. And the subtitles on that first episode were all in lowercase and they were purple.
Wow.
It looked terrible. And I said to the guys, I was just like, we can put this on audio platforms, but the quality's just not there yet. And it was also the production team's first time doing an actual podcast. So they'd worked with music artists and stuff before, but not a podcast. And anyways, we took that risk. I remember they said, because we had that break and we called it Coffee Charge Conversations. So we were like, we have to have coffee in the show. Chris made us each a coffee. And the first one was stronger than I thought. I'm sure for you, after your night out as well, the heart rate started going.
Yeah, I needed it though.
And we took that break at the halfway point, and then that second coffee just sent me through the roof. I remember the second half of that conversation, I was looking at you, but I started seeing white, and I started seeing 2 guys. And from that day on, I was like, okay, we're sticking to one coffee and probably just like my own little cappuccino sachets, because that coffee is built different.
But I think most importantly, how much has changed since then. 2 years. I mean, how far has this podcast come? Sorry. Episode 47, I think you're on. And a lot in between for the both of us.
One of those things being the 75 hard.
Yes.
What led you to take that on?
So I actually tried it for the first time last year with a bunch of mates. And yeah, the first month of it was good. Then I had my first white collar fight. And yeah, I was very hyped after that. I said, I'm going to drink. And then the discipline kind of faded from there. This year, I decided I want to try it again. But this time, no if, buts, or maybes. We're doing it. And yeah, I'm glad to say that I locked in. And we finished it without any excuses, you know. I actually got to day 4 this year. And I went out, didn't have any beer, got home, went to bed, woke up the next morning, didn't take my photo. Day 1.
So what are the rules?
So it's pretty simple. It's only 5 things. So it's 2 45-minute workouts. 1 must be outside. Follow a diet, which is pretty at your own will, as long as it sticks to, you know, a healthy structure. Obviously, no alcohol. Read 10 pages a day of a self-improvement book. 3.8 liters of water. And then obviously your photo, which can be a tricky one when you get to the end of the day.
And we'll put the photo on screen. The transformation that you had from day 1 to day 75. Out of anyone that I've seen do the 75 hard, I think your transformation was the craziest. I can't tell you how many people I've actually shown and how many people have said to me, yo, dude, have you seen guys post? Did you see like how shredded he got? And yeah, I mean, you took it seriously.
Yeah, and it actually goes back to a funny memory. I was with Gups and we were just looking at old photos on my phone, and he stumbled across one when I was still swimming in high school. And he goes, "Gui, you had a rig." Like, dude, where's this guy? And I always thought back to it. And then when we actually did the challenge, or when I did it again, that was the goal in mind. And obviously, Gups also had a crazy transformation himself. So I asked him to help me with the diet. And in that last month, I really refined my diet and followed his. And that's where I saw big, big improvements.
Who were you before that? Why did you one day decide? I mean, obviously you had tried it before and it failed, and one day you must have been like, okay, no more excuses. Now I'm doing this. What was the reason for that?
Well, I think it was as simple as looking in the mirror and deciding, do I like the person I see? And I didn't. I mean, dude, I had a Nkaba on me. It was deep. And then I think also from what I've been doing, we've been running a lot, the boxing, and it comes down to choosing your suffering. Because if you don't choose, it will choose for you. And it's like going for a run. It sucks. You're out of breath. You're hurting. Afterwards, you feel amazing. There you're choosing how you want to suffer. Versus maybe lying in bed all day after a big night. You get out of bed at the end of the day and you feel like crap. And that's also choosing your suffering.
So you mentioned the physical change, looking at yourself in the mirror, saying, I don't necessarily like the person that I see, or I'd like to change the person that I see. Did you have the same thing mentally?
Honestly, the physical is just a bonus. I think everything I wanted in that challenge was mental. And that's what I got. Biggest being discipline. Because, yeah, I try to get up most mornings around 5 o'clock to get that first workout out the way. Couldn't always do that. Then it comes to the end of the day and you're dreading it because you know there's 2 workouts coming. And if you're really going to do this thing properly, it says you can't do them back to back. So there has to be a break in between. And yeah, just proving to myself that I can do the things I set my mind to. That was big.
Today we said we're going to do a run and an ice bath. 6:15, we met for our run. And now we've locked in for Soweto Marathon, the end of November. And by the time this episode comes out, I think it's about 3 weeks or so. It'll almost be time for us to actually do the Soweto Marathon. And I'm proud of you. Even though you haven't done it yet, I actually haven't trained this consistently before. And I remember in the first episode, you said that your dad always told you that you have the best intentions, but then you don't put it into action. What I've seen with you recently is that you holding me accountable more than I'm holding you accountable at times. And that wasn't that. If you rewind to me standing over your bed, getting your mom to let me in the house, telling you what's going on, versus like, okay, we're meeting at 6 o'clock, we're going to run 21 Ks. Last week we ran 21 Ks as our training in the rain. I think we both had a few beers the night before. And we weren't really feeling up to it. And previous version of you would have said, I'm out. And to be honest, I think previous version of me also probably would have found some excuse to cling on to, and I wouldn't have done it.
Definitely. And shout out to you for making me do this marathon. You bought your ticket. You kept hustling me.
Nagging you.
Yeah, saying, "Where's your ticket?" And I got it, and now it's just getting that training in. And as terrified as I am, I'm so excited. First marathon, it's just another opportunity to test myself and see where we can go.
So during the 75, going back to the 75, you might not have liked the person that you saw in the mirror, but I'm sure you got to know that person a lot better.
I realized that if I really put my mind to something, I can do it. And that's just, I took every day as it came, every workout, every sip of water, and just took those small wins. You know, when you try look at the staircase in front of you, the mountain, it can be daunting and it might push some people away, but you just got to look at the next step, because that's the only one that really matters. I mean, there might not even be a staircase for some people, and that's the harsh reality. So another thing though was, yeah, being sober. Not completely, I still had nicotine, but being present in the moment is what I found. Wherever I was, I slowly started to see my mind change, and I was there. And that was a very real thing that I hadn't seen in a long time. I think the substances really can mess with the head.
Yeah, it blurs your vision a little bit.
Blinding.
And look, the point of this episode is not to say drinking is bad.
No.
Do not have a beer with your friends. And I just think it's interesting when you do things in moderation as well. You find out what you've been doing too much of. And, you know, you can be like, okay, cool. I was having too much chocolate cake every day. Doesn't mean I have to cut it out completely. But, you know, maybe that's something that's affecting me a little bit. And I think it's the same thing with the drinking. It's not to say don't drink at all.
No.
And I've actually got a theory on this, which I wanted to chat to you about. I think, and it will be different for some people, depending on how social you are and how sociable you are. But I think if you are the healthiest person, but you don't have a network, so you do all the gym, you stay away from alcohol, you know, your body's a temple, yet you're not really socializing and networking with people, I think that you die quicker than someone who has a moderate amount of alcohol, or at least, you know, as in a social way, and at least sees people and interacts and networks with people. Not to say that drinking's better than not drinking, but I think it comes down to the social element.
So I could say to you, what's more important, the journey or the destination? Neither. It's the company along the way. And that's exactly what you're saying.
That it on.
Yeah. I've realized in my life, you know, you can chase goals, you can get them, you can fall in love with the process along the way. I did fall in love with the 75 hard process, just seeing the person I was becoming, but it really wouldn't have been worth it now without all the experiences and, you know, times I had with people that helped me, that pushed me, just supported me. That for me is a big one. You know, you can reach the top, but if you're there by yourself, is it really worth it?
Yeah, it's true. And I might butcher the line slightly, but How I Met Your Mother, one of my favorite shows of all time. Barney says, because he always says that something's legendary. It's going to be legendary. Tonight's going to be legendary. That thing that we did was legendary. And the one episode he says, was it really legendary if your friends weren't there to see it?
Bars. No, exactly that. Sure. So I have a question for you. What have you been learning about yourself lately?
Define lately.
Rec-
Years, months, weeks, just recently.
what important things have you been learning about yourself lately?
I've learned that I am similar to you, and I know it sounds cliche, but I am learning that I'm more capable than I give myself credit for. And sometimes my brain goes into excuse mode or hypercritical mode, and it's almost like I'm saying, "No, Mike, you can't do it." Or if I'm about to go for a run, it's like, "Oh, but your knee's a little bit sore," or you didn't maybe get enough sleep last night. And I realized that not too long ago, I used to let those voices define me, and that inner critic would just be that would be me. I'd let that control who I was. And I think what I've realized recently is that if I am disciplined and I put in the work and I start doing processes that force me to do things when I don't want to do it, I actually become a lot closer to the person I want to be, and I'm not trapped by this voice in my head telling me who I am.
So I'll say two things on that. Firstly, I can see we always talk about how we speak to ourselves, you and and I can see that you've been a lot kinder to yourself and actually backed yourself. And I see the growth in that because those conversations we have with ourselves are the most important conversations we ever going to have. We wake up with them, we walk around with them, we go to bed with them, and eventually we act on them. So you better make sure you're having good chats. And if they're bad, then acknowledge it and do something about it.
And the company is great, but when you don't have it, that's the most important time to get your thoughts right.
Yeah, I mean, I do remember from the first episode I mentioned there was a point where I couldn't be by myself and I I was always antsy, needing to message someone, needing to have a plan. And now I love my time, dude. It's it's when I can just relax and be free. Just let my mind wander, do what I want, and yeah, I need more of it. And yeah, it's good. Be your best friend.
I like that you mentioned being kind to yourself because I I mentioned that inner critic and I can be so harsh on myself, and I've become more cognizant of it. So now I'll watch. It's tough because I'm the one. I'm so invested in the podcast. I'm always looking for minor things I can improve on. So I'll go back to previous episodes, or when I'm creating the reels, I'll look at what I've been saying and how I came across or how I started an episode. And I get so critical of myself. And yes, I wanted to work on things and become better. And I'd ask people, what can I improve on? And I would completely cut out all the things that I'm doing well. It was so focused on growing and becoming better that I was never happy with where I was. And, you see all these things in different podcasts and people that have got a little bit more wisdom, a bit more experience in their life say that, they always thought they were going to get to the destination, as you say. They always thought they're going to get to a point and then it was going to be like, oh, this is the moment I've been waiting for my whole life. But if you were 70 years old, I can almost guarantee you would do anything to trade your life for being 25, 26 now.
Without a doubt. And hopefully not. Hopefully when you at that point in your life, you've done all the things you wanted to. You really try to tap into that potential and you wouldn't change a thing. And I think that's most people's biggest fear. Dying with that regret, that lack of potential that you didn't tap into.
And with 75 hard, I'm sure one of the things that you would have thought about is the concept of delayed gratification.
Very much.
What do you think about delayed gratification?
I think it's awesome. I mean, we live in a world right now where gratification or no, pleasure and dopamine hits are just every 2 seconds, and it's overstimulating. So now when you set something up, it's like, okay, I can only watch my Netflix or have a drink later if I do X, Y, and Z. And if you actually do it, when you get to that point, wow, does it hit different?
I'm going to not disagree with you, but I've got a counter argument. If you delay gratification too much, then you're just delaying joy. And if you're delaying joy, then what are you doing?
Yo. Good answer.
I mean, you've got to be. It's the same thing with, like how I was saying, how I get so critical of myself and I'm wanting to improve. But even if I got to where I wanted to be, I had all the subscribers, followers, the numbers that I wanted, but I still was unhappy with the podcast. And it always just felt like this task of like, okay, now I've got to grow and I've got to get better and whatever. And I never took a moment to have an episode like this one where I go, this is pretty cool that we're sitting here right now, 2 years later, and the podcast is still going. We've become closer friends, and I think our lives are much better than they were at that stage.
No, definitely because of the growth. But you're right. If you constantly delay it and you're not having fun along the way, you're doing something wrong. I mean, life isn't that serious. And I really try to not take life seriously as much as I can. I actually saw it in a podcast with Maddie McConaughey. He says, make a sense of humor your default emotion. And I love that. Because even when things go up, down, sideways, if you can still find a way to laugh about it and just make light of a situation, you're doing something right.
And I think part of that is saying it's okay sometimes.
I love that. So I actually heard this in the beginning of my challenge. I was speaking to a guy at someone's birthday, and we were also having a really meaningful conversation. And he said, dude, sometimes you mess up. Sometimes you don't do the things you want to. You could have changed things, but it's okay. And that stuck with me as well. Because it is. We all make mistakes. No one's perfect. And you just got to tell yourself that. It's okay. But it's what you do next. It's how you act upon that that matters the most.
I think I can't speak for the whole of the world, but I think a lot of us have regrets. And it's a lot of people say, "Oh, I wouldn't change a thing because it's who I am today."
Mm,
But deep down, I think a lot of people would change things, some things in their life if they could. Not the whole trajectory of their life, but there's always been things that we do and we go, why did I do that? That wasn't me. That's not my intention. And you beat yourself up about it. And sometimes it's not a bad thing to beat yourself up about it because sometimes you did something that you're not proud of. But I agree, there has to become a point where you go, okay, now I'm not living in this hatred towards myself kind of zone anymore. It's time to look at what the next step is. And I think part of that is going, it's okay.
yeah, and to that, I'll say learn how to stand fast. Remain curious rather than certain. To seek truth over comfort. And to think carefully rather than react quickly. Yeah. Another thing I discovered in this journey is controlling my emotions. I was a very reactive person. Even if I was having a conversation I enjoyed, I would cringe at an awkward silence. And it's fine to pause and just really take in what you're hearing. I think a lot of people don't know how to do that. They're always trying to keep the momentum, and sometimes you just got to sit and see and think what's going on.
A lot of us don't really listen.
No. No.
We listen for cues that we can add our point to.
Yeah, a lot of people are just thinking what they're going to say next. And you'll pick up on that very quickly because you can see they just want to get their points in and cut you off. They're not listening to what you're trying to say. And when I see that nowadays, I'll tolerate it to a point, and then I'll actually just walk away because you're not actually processing what I'm trying to tell you, and there's no value being added. So I'd just rather remove myself.
It probably comes down to empathy. If you're able to try, it's actually very hard to do in some circumstances, but if you can just try to put yourself in someone else's shoes. So someone cuts you off in traffic. Our immediate response is like start swearing at them, put the hood on, like, what a flippin' idiot.
Yeah.
And you've got this rage for a few seconds. And what I've started to do, and it doesn't mean I always get it right. There's sometimes where I'm just like, dude, what the hell are you doing? But I kind of think about it and I go, if I was in their shoes, maybe I don't know their full story and I'm just assuming. Maybe their dad's in hospital and they're rushing off to now go see their dad who has cancer for maybe the last time. And they're a bit flustered and they're in a rush and their head's a little bit scrambled. Maybe someone who's been a little bit quiet or a bit off. Maybe it's selfishly we think it's us, but maybe they're going through a very difficult time, and maybe they're in that headspace where you said you kind of were, where they didn't really like who they were. and they were a bit confused as to who they were and what their place was in the world.
A bit careless. I think regardless, especially with road rage, because I've had a relationship with that item. But also now when it happens, I'll let my little swear go off, but almost immediately it's done and I've moved on. So I can't say that I'm not reacting, but I'm not holding on to it now. And yeah, especially with my dad, I'll drive with him and he's getting secondhand rage from the taxi that's cutting someone else off at the top of the robot. And I said to him one day, why do you care? And he's like, oh, but this idiot, he doesn't know how to drive. And I said, has it affected you? Not really. Do you see it all the time? Yeah. Do you know they're going to do it? Yeah. So why do you get upset every time? And yeah, I had to practice what I preached there. And so I'm a lot better at it now. Because, yeah, there's certain things you know what someone might do and how it might play out. And, yeah, going back to empathy, being able to put yourself in their shoes. And it goes further. I think it was cognitive empathy, where you know how some people are and how they react and do things. And you actually, because you understand them so well, you don't get upset by why they did it. And that's a whole nother level.
To get to that point, though, you got to know someone pretty well. You got to care about someone more than yourself to get to a point where you feel like you actually can understand how someone else is thinking. Because a lot of us assume.
I hate assumptions. It's, yeah, you know the saying, an assumption's making an ass of me and you. And we do it. I also assume things. But try just observe. It's good to be the observer sometimes and not be involved. And then you also catch a break.
I think it's letting go.
Yeah. And that is a skill that takes a lot of effort. I know about it. I'm trying it in different aspects of my life. And yeah, I don't know, maybe you have to be a monk to fully get that skill. But as long as you acknowledge it and you actively trying, you will get better.
We often chase.
And when you chase, it only gets further away. And that's the art of letting go. So Navy SEALs, when they do one of their drills, it's they tie their hands behind their back, they tie their feet together, and they throw them in a deep pool, and they say survive for whatever it is, 30 minutes. And all the guys who try bop at the surface and just stay up there, they're the ones who get tired and actually drown. They need to be pulled out. But it's the ones that sink to the bottom, push back up, take their breath, and do that. They let go. That's how you get through that.
I love that analogy. And often we try, I know for me, I try because I want something so badly. It happens on the golf course a lot, actually. I want to win so badly. And I'm playing a course that I know I'm not going to play for a while again. and I get really excited and I build it up in my mind as this big thing, or I'm playing a league game and I just, it's important to me. The more I tell myself that story about how important it is to me,
The worse you play.
the worse I play. Same thing with a podcast. If I build my guest up to be this absolute hero in my mind, where I'm going to have to now turn up as someone other than myself and be this excellent, quick host who just knows what he's doing, I put so much pressure on myself, and that pressure actually makes me freeze up a little bit inside, and I don't get the outcome that I'm looking for.
But when you go into something and you're unfazed of what the outcome will be, how much better does it go then? Have you ever hit a flow state on the course where you just you're hitting that ball right, you know exactly the angle you're cutting, whatever it may be. And in that moment, you're not thinking, I need to win, I need to make this shot. You're doing it. And that's flow state. And I think everyone to some degree has experienced it. It's hard to tap into, but I think it all starts with whatever you're going into, not worrying about the outcome, just letting it happen, trusting the process.
And embracing it to a certain extent.
Definitely. And it's so cool because you can start a round off badly and still bring it back, because at some point you might think, okay, I'm not phased how this is going to go anymore. And you start to lock in. So I have another question for you. What part of your life right now brings you the most meaning?
I'm going to take my time with this one.
And I know you have a girlfriend. I know that's bringing a lot of meaning into your life right now. And that could be your answer, but whatever it may be.
I think it's the circle of people that I have in my life. Friends, girlfriend, family. I feel very, very supported. And sometimes in the past, I used to doubt that a little bit. Doubt if people were really as close as I thought. Through doing the podcast, I've realized who my real friends are. It doesn't mean that if you don't support the podcast, you're not a real friend.
Mm.
But, I mean, for example, since episode 1, you were episode 1. After that, you could have just phased out a little bit and done it for the hype and whatever. But almost every episode I've put out, you've commented on, you've sent me a DM, you've chatted to me saying, when's the next one? And I've got a few people in my life. I've actually got quite a lot, which is really fulfilling. And I've got a few people that genuinely care. And that gives me some meaning. What gives me purpose? I don't know if purpose and meaning are really the same thing, but the podcast gives me the greatest sense of purpose.
Sure. And would you say that's because your episodes are giving value to people?
Yeah, it's something that's not just for me anymore.
Wow.
I've grown exponentially in the last 2 years, and I can pick at least one thing that I've learned from every single guest that I've had. And often I'll be in a situation or in a difficult time, And in my head, randomly, something that someone said during one of these podcast episodes will ring in my head. But not just for me, that, yes, that helps me and helps me to grow, but that doesn't give me purpose. What gives me purpose is when I get a message from someone saying, wow, I was going through something extremely similar and you inspired me to speak up about it, or to not view things this way, or, not to say that I'm the one giving all the advice. Often it's the guest that will say something, and to just get those messages. Sometimes you don't even get a message, but I just get the feeling that when you released an episode, at least one person has, it's changed their life, or they've gained something that they didn't have before.
And I like the point you made that you've learned something from every person you've had on here. And I think every person you meet knows something that you don't. And when you go in with that mindset, it changes a lot of interactions you have.
I wasn't curious before.
Curiosity is a beautiful thing. I think everyone should be curious about something and remain curious, because even the experts don't know everything and they're still learning on the daily.
So, talking about learning, I've got one final question for you. What's one lesson that life taught you the hard way?
I'd say if you don't choose your suffering, it's going to choose for you. So be deliberate.
I love that. And I've loved this episode more than you can imagine. And it almost went the way that I wanted it to go, but better. And yeah, I think we've become a lot closer as friends. And I've just, I feel like you're like a soundboard to me in a lot of ways. When I'm going through a difficult time, you're one of the first few people that I reach out to. And yeah, I think it's awesome to have people in my life like you that I can reach out to when I'm to share good news or bad news. And yeah, this conversation was really, really fruitful for me.
Likewise, Baki. And yeah, it's good to come back and reflect on what we've done in the past 2 years, and that it hasn't been a downfall of a story. We've gone up, and there's always going to be hiccups along the way, but that's what makes it interesting.